The Keithian colony ship had been traveling through the vast darkness of space for what felt like an eternity. Maya stood in the observation deck with her hands pressed against the cool, transparent wall, staring out at the infinite stars surrounding them. Behind her, the sounds of the ship continued their rhythmic humming and beeping. The constant background noise reminded her of a dying civilization, trying desperately to survive among the stars. The ship was old, built centuries ago when the Keithian people still had hope and resources. Now it served as a floating refuge for the last members of a once proud species. Maya was 37 years old by human standards. Her Keithian physiology made her one of the oldest members of the colony. Her crystalline skin still held most of its natural emerald color. Some translucent sections had begun to show the gray of age and stress. She wore the white uniform of a medical officer, fitted perfectly to her lean frame. As the chief medical officer of the colony, Maya carried responsibilities that sometimes felt heavier than the entire ship itself. Every decision she made affected the survival of her people. Every wrong choice could mean death for dozens of individuals who depended on her knowledge and judgment. The crisis had begun 3 months earlier, when the nutrient supply started to run dangerously low. The Keithians required a specific chemical compound found only in the crystalline cores of certain meteor types. These meteor types existed in isolated regions of space that were extremely difficult to reach. Without this nutrient, their bodies would slowly begin to fail completely. Their crystalline structures would break down piece by piece until nothing remained but dust. It was a slow and agonizing death that Maya had been trained to recognize and treat, but she had no cure when the supplies ran out. Maya had watched as the first colony members began to show signs of the famine. It started with a loss of color in the skin. The emerald glow faded to a dull brown over time. Then came the lethargy, an overwhelming exhaustion that made even the smallest movements feel impossible. The citizens would lie in the medical bays for hours, staring at nothing, waiting for their bodies to finally give up the struggle. Some went peacefully, their systems simply shutting down as if they were tired of fighting. Others fought until the very end, their will to survive driving them forward. Lyra had been one of the first to show symptoms. Maya remembered the moment when her younger sister came to her with fear in her eyes. Lyra said that her skin was starting to lose its color. Lyra was only 19 years old, still young enough to have hoped for a long life ahead. She had dreams of becoming a teacher. She wanted to help educate the children of the colony about their history and culture. She had been so vibrant and full of life, with a laugh that could brighten even the darkest corridors of the ship. Now Lyra lay in the medical bay, confined to a specialized bed that attempted to slow the progression of the famine. The medical technology on the ship was advanced. However, it could not cure the famine. It could only delay its effects for a limited time. Maya visited her sister every day, watching as the color continued to drain from her skin. She watched as Lyra's movements became slower and more painful. She tried to maintain hope for Lyra, to believe that some solution would present itself. But deep inside, she knew the truth with absolute certainty. Without the nutrient supplies, Lyra would eventually fade away. She would join thousands of other Keithians who had already succumbed to the famine. The thought of losing her sister was unbearable. Lyra was the only family Maya had left. Their parents had died years ago during the evacuation of their home planet. Their other siblings had been lost in the wars that had devastated the Keithian civilization. Maya turned away from the window and made her way through the corridors of the ship slowly. The passages were dimly lit, conserving the limited power that the aging reactor could produce. She passed several Keithian citizens who looked at her with hopeful eyes. They wondered if she had discovered some cure or solution to their crisis. She had nothing to tell them except that she was doing her best. She repeated that she was working on the problem constantly. She promised that she had not given up on them. But even as she said these things, she felt the weight of her inadequacy. She arrived at the command center where Council Leader Marcus was waiting for her. Marcus was an elder of the Keithian people. He was one of the few who still held a vibrant emerald color, despite his advanced age. He had been a leader of their civilization when they still controlled multiple planets. He carried the weight of those lost empires in his crystalline eyes. He looked at Maya with an expression that mixed concern with resignation about their fate. Marcus told her that the medical supplies were running critically low. At the current rate of consumption, they would last only 2 more weeks. After that, the citizens would have nothing left to help ease their suffering. He asked her if she had any ideas, any solutions, any hope that she could offer to the desperate population. Maya could see that even this strong leader was beginning to lose faith in their survival chances. She told him that she was working on every possible angle. She said she was examining all available options. But she did not tell him about the calculations she had done late at night in her quarters. She did not tell him about the region of space where the nutrient meteors existed. She did not mention the radiation levels there. Marcus seemed to understand that something was not being said. He did not press the matter. He placed his weathered hand on her shoulder. The weight of that faith pressed down on Maya like a physical force as she left the command center and headed toward her quarters. Maya's quarters were small and sparse, containing only the bare essentials needed for survival. The walls were made of the same cold metal as the rest of the ship, and the single window looked out onto the endless expanse of space. She sat at her workstation, pulling up the data she had been compiling over the past 3 months. The holographic displays flickered to life, showing maps of distant regions of space where the nutrient meteors were known to exist. She had been studying this data obsessively, running calculations over and over again until she had them memorized. There was a field of meteors located approximately 2 weeks of travel from their current location. The meteors contained the exact nutrient that the Keithian people needed to survive. However, the region of space where these meteors existed was bathed in intense solar radiation that would be lethal to any normal Kethian who ventured too close. The radiation levels in that region were hundreds of times higher than what the human body could survive. Even the most advanced protective equipment available on the ship would only provide temporary protection. Anyone who tried to retrieve the meteors would need more than just equipment. They would need a biological modification that could make their crystalline body resistant to radiation. Maya had been working on such a modification in secret for weeks now. The biochemical compound she had developed was unlike anything she had ever created before. It would alter the cellular structure of a Keithian body, making it capable of withstanding radiation levels that would normally be instantly fatal. However, the modification came at a terrible cost. The compound would accelerate the natural breakdown of the crystalline structure. A Keithian treated with the compound might be able to survive radiation for 3 or 4 days at most. After that time, the cellular damage would become irreversible. The treated individual would have perhaps 1 week to live after the treatment, and during that week their body would slowly deteriorate. The pain would be immense and death would come slowly and agonizingly. Maya had run the calculations countless times. This compound was the only way to reach the meteor field and retrieve the supplies that could save her people. She looked at the vial of the compound sitting on her desk. It was a shimmering liquid that seemed to glow with an inner light. Just 1 dose of this liquid could give someone the ability to complete the mission. But it would also condemn them to death. Maya picked up the vial and held it up to the light, watching how the liquid caught the glow and refracted it into 1,000 different colors. A thought came to her that had been nagging at the edges of her mind for days now. She could volunteer for this mission herself. She was the strongest of all the remaining Kethians. She was a skilled medical officer who understood how to manage pain and how to keep a failing body functioning. She could make the journey to the meteor field, collect the supplies and bring them back. It would take all the strength she had and more, but it was possible. The alternative was to watch Lyra die, to watch all of her people fade away one by one. She could not allow that to happen. The weight of her responsibility was so heavy that sometimes she felt it might crush her completely. She had been trained to save lives, and the lives of her entire civilization depended on her now. The knowledge of that fact sat in her stomach like a stone, cold and unforgiving. Maya stood up and walked to the small mirror that hung on the wall of her quarters. She looked at her reflection and tried to see herself as others saw her. She saw the emerald glow of her skin, still bright despite the stress of the past months. She saw the intelligent eyes that had studied medicine and science for her entire life. She saw the face of someone who had dedicated her life to serving others. She thought about her sister Lyra lying in the medical bay, growing weaker with each passing day. She thought about all the other Kethians on the ship who were slowly losing their battle against the famine. She thought about the children of the colony, the young ones who had never even known what it felt like to live on one of their home worlds. They deserved a chance to survive, a chance to build a future for their people. Maya made a decision in that moment. She would take the compound and undertake the mission to retrieve the meteors. She would do whatever it took to save her people. The fear she felt was immense, but she pushed it aside. Fear was a luxury she could not afford. She had to be strong for her sister and for her civilization. She had to be willing to make the sacrifice that was necessary. She placed the vial back on her desk and sat down again. Now she needed to figure out how to present this idea to the colony leadership. She could not simply announce that she was going on a suicidal mission. She needed to find someone who could help her reach the meteor field. She needed pilot and engineer support. Most of all, she needed someone to watch over Lyra after she was gone, to make sure her sister was cared for properly. As Maya sat in the darkness of her quarters, contemplating the path that lay ahead of her, she did not know that events were already in motion that would change everything. A human starship from Earth was approaching their location, carrying people who would soon become crucial to the survival of the Keithian civilization. The universe had plans for Maya that she could not yet imagine, plans that would test her strength and her courage in ways she had never experienced before. The alarms on the colony ship began to sound in the middle of the night cycle. The alert was different from the regular systems checks that happened every few days. This alarm carried an urgency that made every Keithian on the ship become alert. Maya jerked awake in her quarters and rushed to the communication center. Council leader Marcus was already there, looking at the sensor displays with an expression of cautious hope mixed with concern. A ship had been detected approaching their location from the vast darkness of space. It was not a Keithian vessel, as there were no other Keithian ships left in existence. The surviving Keithians had all gathered on this one colony ship after the fall of their civilization. This approaching ship bore markings that the database identified as belonging to a human expedition from the planet Earth. Humans were a species that the Keithians had minimal contact with in the past. They were known to be curious and sometimes unpredictable in their dealings with other species. Marcus ordered that all the colony members remain calm and that no hostile actions be taken. The humans might bring news from other parts of the galaxy, and they might even bring supplies that could help the Keithians survive their current crisis. However, Marcus was also cautious. He did not know what the humans wanted, or whether they came with peaceful intentions. The colony's defenses were weak, having been depleted by the wars that had nearly destroyed the Keithian civilization. The human ship maneuvered into position near the colony vessel and opened a communication channel. A voice came through the speakers, clear and strong. It was Captain Leo Foster of the human exploration vessel. He was a friendly voice that expressed genuine curiosity about the Keithian colony. He explained that his ship had detected the presence of the Keithian vessel and that his crew had decided to approach and offer assistance if it was needed. Maya listened to the communication with mixed feelings. Part of her wanted to reject any help from outsiders. The Keithians had always been fiercely independent, relying on no one but themselves. However, another part of her saw this as a possible opportunity. Humans were known to have advanced technology in some areas. Perhaps they could help. Perhaps they could offer some kind of solution to the famine crisis. Marcus invited Captain Foster to board the colony ship for a meeting. This was a bold move, trusting an unknown human captain to come aboard their vessel. However, Marcus believed that risk was necessary when a civilization faced extinction. Within the hour, Captain Foster arrived at the colony ship with a small escort of 3 human officers. They moved through the corridors with expressions of wonder and curiosity, looking at the crystalline architecture of the Keithian ship with obvious fascination. Captain Foster was a tall man with weathered features and eyes that seemed to contain both kindness and strength. He carried himself with the bearing of someone who had spent many years among the stars. He greeted Marcus and the other Keithian leaders with formal courtesy and expressions of respect. He explained that he had detected unusual life signs on their ship and wanted to determine if they needed help. Maya was brought into the meeting to explain the situation. She found herself describing the famine crisis to the human captain, explaining the biology of the Keithian people and their need for the specific nutrient found in the meteors. As she spoke, she watched Captain Foster's expression carefully. She could see that he understood the gravity of their situation, and she saw genuine concern in his eyes. Captain Foster explained that his ship had advanced sensors capable of detecting meteorite fields across vast regions of space. He told them that his crew had actually identified a rich field of nutrient meteors not far from their current location. He said that it would only take about 2 weeks of travel to reach the field. He offered to share this information with the Keithians and to provide whatever assistance his small crew could manage. The hope that surged through the Keithian leaders was almost overwhelming. Finally, there was a possible solution to their crisis. The meteors were real, not just a legend or a distant possibility. They were actually out there within reach if someone could only get to them. However, Captain Foster also felt obligated to mention that the region of space where these meteors existed was characterized by intense solar radiation. He explained that this radiation would be lethal to most biological organisms, including humans. He said that his crew had considered sending out an expedition to retrieve the meteors, but the risk was too great for his people. He asked if the Kethians had any way to protect someone who needed to venture into that radiation zone. The question hung in the air, and Maya's heart began to race as she realized what was about to be asked of her. She could feel all the eyes in the room turning toward her as the senior medical officer. Everyone knew that she had been working on biological modifications for months. Everyone was aware of the secret projects in her laboratory. Now the moment had come when she would have to reveal her work and explain what she had been developing. She took a deep breath and began to speak. She told the assembled group about the biochemical compound she had created, about its ability to allow a Kethian to survive radiation exposure. She explained what the treatment would do to a person's body, and she was honest about the consequences. She did not hide the fact that anyone who received the treatment would likely have only a week to live afterward. She presented the facts clearly and directly, allowing everyone in the room to understand exactly what would be required. The silence that followed her explanation was deafening. Everyone in the room understood what she was saying. Someone would have to volunteer for this mission. Someone would have to take the compound and venture into the radiation zone. Someone would have to sacrifice their life to save the civilization. The weight of that realization hung over the meeting like a dark cloud. Captain Foster spoke first after the silence had stretched on for several moments. He stated that he could not ask any of the Kethians to undertake such a dangerous mission. He said that he would volunteer himself to retrieve the meteors, even though the radiation levels would be lethal to a human. He believed that his crew had a responsibility to help the Kethians in their time of greatest need. He would not allow innocent people to die if there was something he could do to prevent it. Maya listened to his words with respect for his courage, but she also knew the reality of the situation. Even with protective equipment, Captain Foster would not survive more than a few hours in the radiation zone. He would not have enough time to collect the supplies and return safely to the ship. His sacrifice would be noble but ultimately useless. She knew what had to be done. She knew who had to go. Maya volunteered to undertake the mission. She spoke calmly and with certainty, explaining that she had created the biochemical compound specifically for this purpose. She had the medical knowledge to manage the effects of the treatment on her own body. She was the strongest and most physically capable of all the remaining Kethians. She was the best choice for this mission. Her words shocked everyone in the room, particularly Captain Foster, who had not expected this response from her. Captain Foster objected strongly to her volunteering. He said that he could not allow her to sacrifice herself. He argued that they could find another solution, that there must be some other way to retrieve the meteors. But Maya remained firm in her decision. She had already made up her mind before the meeting even began. She knew that this was what had to be done. Council leader Marcus asked her if she was absolutely certain about her decision. He tried to give her an opportunity to reconsider, to change her mind. But Maya told him that she was certain about her choice. She was the chief medical officer of the colony. It was her responsibility to protect her people from harm. This was the only way she could fulfill that duty. She would take the biochemical compound and retrieve the meteors. She would do everything in her power to bring them back to the colony safely. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding that no amount of argument would change Maya's mind. He had learned over the years that when Maya made a decision, she stuck to it with absolute determination. He told her that the colony would be forever grateful for her sacrifice. He told her that future generations of Kethians would remember her name and what she had done for them. He told her that she would be remembered as a hero of her people for all time. After the meeting ended, Maya made her way through the corridors to the medical bay. She knew that she would need to prepare the biochemical compound for injection into her body. She would need to run one final set of tests to ensure that the treatment was stable and as safe as it could possibly be. Most importantly, she needed to say goodbye to Lyra. She needed to spend quality time with her sister before the mission began. Lyra was sleeping when Maya entered the medical bay. She looked so small and fragile lying on the hospital bed. The color had drained almost completely from her skin, leaving her looking almost translucent and ghost-like. Her breathing was shallow and weak, the physical signs of someone whose body was slowly shutting down. Maya sat down beside the bed and took her sister's hand gently in her own. Lyra woke slowly, and when she saw Maya standing beside her, she tried to smile despite her weakness. She asked what had happened, if there was any news about supplies for the colony. Maya told her about Captain Foster and his human ship, about the discovery of the nutrient meteors in that distant region of space, and about the biochemical compound that could allow someone to retrieve them safely. She explained everything clearly without trying to hide any of the difficult truths. When Lyra understood what Maya was saying, she began to cry tears of both hope and despair. She told her older sister that she could not allow Maya to sacrifice herself, that there must be someone else who could undertake the dangerous mission. But Maya explained that there was no one else who was capable. She explained that Lyra had so much of her life still ahead of her. She explained that Lyra had dreams and ambitions that deserved to be fulfilled and achieved. Maya told her sister that by making this sacrifice, she was ensuring that Lyra would have a future. Lyra would live to become a teacher as she had always wanted. She would help educate the next generation of Keithian children. She would help her people build a new civilization among the stars. This was the greatest gift that Maya could give to her sister, and it was worth any price. She wanted Lyra to understand this. Lyra gripped Maya's hand tightly, holding it as though she could keep her sister with her if she just held on hard enough. But they both knew that was not possible. The mission had to happen, and Maya had to be the one to undertake it. As they sat together in the darkness of the medical bay, neither sister spoke anymore. They simply held each other, making precious memories that would have to last the rest of Lyra's lifetime. Eventually, Maya had to let go and return to her quarters to continue preparing for the dangerous mission. She left Lyra sleeping peacefully, sedated by medication that would help her rest well. As Maya walked away from the medical bay, she felt the weight of her decision more heavily than ever before. She was choosing to leave her sister behind, knowing that she would never see Lyra again, but she also knew that this was the right choice, the only choice that could save her people and ensure their survival. The biochemical compound sat on Maya's workstation in a small crystalline vial, glowing softly with an inner light that seemed almost alive. She had spent the entire night running final tests on the formula, ensuring that it was as stable and effective as possible. The injection was scheduled for the early morning hours before the rest of the colony fully woke. Captain Foster had arranged for his human crew to prepare one of their shuttles to transport Maya to the meteor field. The technology on the human ship was different from Keithian equipment, but it was functional and would serve the purpose well. Maya sat at her desk and began to write letters to the people she cared about. She wrote to Council Leader Marcus, thanking him for the leadership he had provided to the colony through so many difficult years. She wrote to the other doctors and medical staff who had worked with her, asking them to continue the work of treating the sick and helping the colony survive. She wrote to the children of the colony, telling them to be brave and to work together to build a new future for their civilization. The letter that was hardest to write was the one to Lyra. Maya wrote about their childhood together, about the games they had played in the gardens of their home world. She wrote about how much she loved her sister, and how proud she was of Lyra's courage and spirit. She told Lyra to remember that her sacrifice was not done out of despair or surrender, but out of love and hope for the future. She told Lyra that she should live her life fully and completely, making the most of every day. She told Lyra that by surviving and thriving, she would honor her older sister's sacrifice. When the morning came, Maya went to the medical bay where Captain Foster was waiting for her. He had with him a human medic named Dr. James who had come to monitor the injection and to help prepare Maya for the journey. Captain Foster's expression showed both admiration for her courage and sadness at the sacrificial path she had chosen. He told her that her action was one of the bravest and most selfless things he had ever witnessed. He said that all of humanity would be grateful for what she was doing. Maya sat down and allowed the human medic to examine her one final time. She wanted to ensure that her body was as strong and healthy as possible before receiving the compound. Dr. James checked her vital functions and confirmed that her physical condition was excellent. He then prepared the injection while Maya sat calmly watching the process. She felt no fear, only a strange sense of peace and acceptance of what was about to happen. Captain Foster took the vial from Dr. James and approached Maya slowly. He explained that he wanted to personally administer the compound to her, as a sign of respect for what she was doing. He told her that this injection represented the hope of an entire civilization. He told her that millions of Keithians, both those living and those who had died before, were depending on her strength and courage. He told her that the human race would never forget what she was doing for her people. Maya nodded and extended her arm. She watched as Captain Foster inserted the needle into her skin and slowly pushed the biochemical compound into her body. She felt it entering her bloodstream, spreading through her system like liquid fire. The sensation was intense but not painful. It was as though her entire body was being energized and transformed at the cellular level. Within minutes, her skin began to change color. The emerald glow shifted slowly into a bronze hue, the color that indicated her body's new resistance to radiation. Maya could feel the changes happening inside her body. She felt stronger, faster, more alive than ever before. But she also felt the underlying damage that the compound was causing. She could sense her cells beginning to break down in ways that she had calculated but never truly experienced. She stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the stars. She could see the human ship docked nearby, ready to take her to the meteor field. She could see the infinite expanse of space stretching out before her. She felt afraid and exhilarated at the same time. This was really happening. She was really going to undertake this mission that would end her life. Captain Foster touched her shoulder gently. He asked if she was ready to board the human shuttle. Maya took one final look at the Kethian colony ship, knowing that she would never return to it. She thought of Lyra sleeping in the medical bay, and she sent her sister a final prayer of love. She turned to Captain Foster and nodded. She was ready. The journey to the human shuttle was like walking through a dream. The crew of the colony watched as Maya passed through the corridors, and they understood what was about to happen. Some of them reached out to touch her as she walked past, blessing her and thanking her silently. Maya did not speak to them, but she acknowledged their gratitude with a nod and a smile. When Maya boarded the human shuttle, she found that Captain Foster had prepared a seat for her with perfect comfort. The human captain would pilot the shuttle himself, unwilling to put that responsibility on anyone else. As the shuttle pulled away from the Keithian ship, Maya watched through the window as the colony grew smaller in the distance. She had made her choice, and now she would see it through to the end. Whatever happened next, she would face it with the courage of her people. She would retrieve the meteors, or she would die trying. There was no third option available to her.